so many of us add additional things to our plate as a way of saying, this is how I take care of myself. And it makes sense why so many of us can feel overwhelmed by this concept of self-care, because it feels like something else we have to add to our ever-lengthening to-do lists. So I'm trying something new. Self-care by subtraction. Hi, I'm Lindsay Bryan-Podvin, Michigan's first financial therapist, author of the book, The Financial Anxiety Solution. And you're probably wondering what I mean by self-care by subtraction. No worries, in this video, or if you're listening in this podcast, I'm going to break it all down. So let's just take a deep breath and get into self-care mode. Self-care by subtraction is exactly what it sounds like. Taking care of yourself by doing less instead of doing more. So instead of adding more yoga to your morning routine, or stuffing even more veggies into your smoothies, or listening to productivity hack podcast on 2x speed, self-care by subtraction invites you to reduce the number of things you're juggling. It's not that those examples of self-care I shared are bad, it's just that so many of us are trying to add additional things to our plate as a way of saying, this is how I take care of myself. And when we think of it like that, it makes sense why so many of us can feel overwhelmed by this concept of self-care, because it feels like something else we have to add to our ever-lengthening to-do lists. Self-care by subtraction is a radical act of self-care because it focuses on easing the load. Here's what I'm doing at the time of this recording. I am practicing self-care by subtraction in 3 areas of my life in this moment: my mental health, my work, and my money, because duh. So starting with mental health, I am limiting my phone use before bed on Mondays. That's it. My hope is that by switching to a Kindle or a physical book before bed instead of scrolling on my phone, it's something that I can commit to once per week. And my hypothesis here is that if I start out this habit on Mondays, it will not only help improve my sleep hygiene for that particular evening of sleep, it will hopefully plant a little seed to continue taking care of myself in that way throughout the rest of the week. All right, next is work. I'm closing shop for 2 weeks at the end of this year. My longtime marketing strategist told me she's going to be taking a 2-week break at the end of the year. At first I thought, like, good for her. And I paused for a second. Okay, if I'm being honest, more than a second. And then I thought, oh, good for us. If we both take those same 2 weeks off of work, we will both get to unplug, knowing that we won't be returning to a stack of emails from one another. And when I say that we're reducing the workload for these 2 weeks, it's not just about putting up our out of offices for those 2 weeks. It also means that we are preparing ahead of time by evenly distributing our workload before and after that 2-week break from our laptops. And finally, money, how I am practicing self-care by subtraction in my financial realm. I am not doing any sort of additional things as we get to the end of this year. That means no last-minute savings challenges or mad dashes to try and out-earn my earnings from the previous month. My household is also keeping our emergency fund exactly where it is. And this kind of tacks on to that idea of trying to earn more or trying to save more in this final few weeks of the year. And this is an intentional choice so that we don't feel like we have to all of a sudden create some sort of challenge to ourselves. The only thing that we have done a little bit differently in this final bit of the year is adjusting our donations and our giving. We donated earlier this year specifically to go toward 2 different nonprofits in our community that help people who've been impacted by the recent SNAP cuts. Quick note, my newsletter community received all of this info a couple of weeks ago by way of email. If you want to stay ahead of the crowd as well, make sure you sign up at mindmoneybalance.com/newsletter. If you're listening to this and thinking like, Lindsay, that sounds really nice, but like, what do I actually do? How can I make this work? Let's take a minute and think about how to apply this to your life. Going back to my newsletter, there's almost always a section called Trust Yourself to Try, where I give you a little tip or prompt to help you implement something at the intersection of money and mental health. And that's what we're doing right here. For this exercise, you can, of course, just consider your responses as you hear me go through them, but I really recommend taking a few moments to grab a scrap piece of paper or a journal and a pen and write down whatever comes up. So first, I want you just to think about a few different areas of responsibilities in your life. Maybe it's your workload, your relationships, or your finances, which I think a lot of us are feeling a little bit more attuned to this time of year. From there, choose one or two of those life areas to focus on. Once you have those one or two max areas, use these questions to guide you. First, write down, what am I currently doing to quote unquote take care of myself in this area? Once you write that down, then ask, what can I pause? Next question, what can I say no to? Finally, what adds more stress to my life than comfort? Notice there is no talk of what can you add, what can you do more of. We're focusing entirely on what you can subtract and what you can remove from that list. Here are some examples if you need a starting point. Unsubscribe from money advice that triggers your anxiety. This could look like setting a timer for 3 minutes and going through your inbox and unsubscribing from money advice or money newsletters that stress you out, or on your podcast player of choice, removing or unfollowing those money podcasts that make you feel like you're behind or you need to add more things to your to-do list. And the same thing goes for social media, obviously. Another example is getting rid of any financial goals that you set out of pressure or shoulds, not purpose. So scratching off any money goals that you set for yourself, whether at the beginning of this year or, even in this final sprint to the end of the year, that aren't really yours. They are somebody else's that you were trying on. The point here isn't about opting out of responsibility or not taking care of yourself. In fact, it's about intentionality, which is the whole point of self-care in the first place. Most importantly, be gentle with yourself as you reflect and make different choices. Subtraction is supposed to feel supportive, not stressful. Quick recap here. Self-care by subtraction isn't about doing less because you're lazy or behind. It's about choosing where your energy should go that feels best for you so you have more of that energy and awareness to go towards the things that really matter to you. You don't need a dramatic, new year, new me overhaul with a bunch of new journals. Just pick one or two areas of your life. Jot down the things that you're doing to so-called take care of yourself and ask yourself these 3 reflection questions. What can I pause? What can I say no to? What adds stress instead of comfort? And subtract one thing this week. If you try it, tell me in the comments. Let other people know and let me know, what are you subtracting? What's the one small thing that you can erase so that you can better take care of yourself? If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, of course, make sure to hit follow. If you liked what I had to share today and want these tips and ideas in your inbox before anybody else gets them, make sure you're on my newsletter. You can get it by going to mindmoneybalance.com/newsletter. Thanks for being here and choosing ease over hustle this season. I'll see you next time.